Okay, this is the part that's going to be an adventure right here, is getting this out. We'll detail that in the video, okay? So if you're going to do this, you'll know exactly what to look for. I'll try to make all the mistakes so you don't have to, okay? And then cutting your vehicle, that's super stressful too. I mean, I'm not excited about this. Well, let's just look this over here. You know, the coating looks pretty nice. Can't complain about that. The welds, you know, are okay on the bumper here. No, it's not continuously welded, but it looks like it's welded mostly where it needs to be. Okay, well, lights are already mounted. That's kind of nice. I'll be able to plug those into an aux beam switch controller. That'll be super sweet. And now these are fully welded all the way around, as they should be. Don't know how strong those are, but there is a backing plate there, it looks like, so there is some reinforcement there. Well, okay, well, I guess I won't complain too much about that then. There's a backing plate that they're tied into, literally. Okay, so that's good. I'm glad to see that it's not just welded to the outside. That makes me feel better about tugging on this if we have to. All right, now this kit is for 2015 to 2024 Toyota 4Runner rear bumper. Okay. Warranty process, and there's a customer service email. Hopefully I won't have to use that. Couple D-rings with some, whatever those are. There's some nuts and bolts for the side pieces. It's like a couple of bolts for mounting grade 8 hardware. That's good. Okay, I won't complain about that. All right, so step 1, it says open the trunk lid. In the opening of the trunk, unscrew the OEM screws and remove the cover of the trunk lid lock. All right, well, step 1, you know, I just jacked it up, put it on jack stands. It's just easier to get the wheels off so you can get to these screws inside of here. I don't know how involved we're going to be in here, but the wheels are off and out of the way. We'll be able to see better. The first step on the instructions is open the trunk lid. Okay, we got that. Second, in the opening of the trunk, unscrew the OEM screws and remove the cover of the trunk lid lock. So I think that's the trunk lid lock. I think this is the cover they're talking about. Here's the screws. Looks like there's 610 millimeters. We'll just buzz them off here. All right, you can't tell unless you go to pull on it. This is attached to this. This is all one continuous piece. It doesn't look like it, but it is. And I think this is getting replaced because this is so broad. This has a flange here. This is like 10 inches. That's like about 10 inches there. Okay, next step, on the perimeter of the lower part of the bumper, unscrew the screws. Let's get underneath. Okay, coming up here into the bumper, looks like there's 1, 2, 3, and there's the same thing on the other side. 1, 2, 3, 10 millimeter. Okay, next it says in the wheel wells, unscrew the screws and take out the caps that secure the fender liner. Okay, it looks like there's 4 screws. There's a 10 millimeter there, there, and there. And then I think these are the caps that they're talking about. And most likely these just pull out like this. Okay. Whoops, there's one more screw behind the fender right here. Okay, next step, we release the latches in the wings and under the rear lights. Pull the corners of the bumper toward you. With an assistant, pull the bumper back. Look for the wires. Disconnect electrical connectors. Okay, coming in from this passenger side, looking back up where the mud flap was, I think that's what they're calling the latch. See that red thing? Let's see if I can hold this. I think that's what they're calling the latch right there. There's a little plastic nut, and the bolt actually comes underneath right here. That's the bolt right there. This bolt right here, and that's another 10 millimeter. Okay, it does say remove the bumper. I can't get the bumper off, and I'm not sure I need to get the bumper off because I think I can just make my cuts with the bumper, with the factory bumper on here, and then get this mounted. Now, I may be wrong about that, but we're going to try that. So what I've done is I've just taken the little laser level, and if you don't have one of these, this whole kit was like 150 bucks or something on Amazon. You can get it even cheaper with a coupon, and the link will be in my description if you're interested in it. But it's not, the Foreigner's not level, of course, so I can't use the level function on this. So I just turn it on and don't unlock it so that it stays, the beam you can adjust just by tilting parts of the tripod here. So I've tilted it until I got it lined up right with this line right here, like right with that crack, and right with that crack over there. Okay, right with that same groove. And that goes right along the top of these grommets, or whatever these little flanges are. There's one there and there's one there. Okay, so is that about correct? As far as if we cut this across here, and then we cut it along this line and cut it into here, and then basically right to right there, is the bumper going to be enough to cover that? And that's the question. So the bumper right here looks like it has about, if I put the tape right in the corner there, has about 1.5 inches of height. If we put the tape here, that's just above 1.5 inches right there. So the top of the bumper is right here, and this whole thing I was planning on taking out. So where this line is, basically my laser line is going to be right here. It comes across here. Now I'm going to be conservative. I'm going to cut here along this edge, not this edge, okay? I'm going to use this inner edge, not here, not this outer edge here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this. So now the question is, do I cut this all the way across? It's not going to be hard with an oscillator, a multi-tool, but I was wondering if we can just cut it to like right here, and then cut a little bit of an angle and go up, and then just pull the bumper off right there, right underneath that seal where the bumper comes apart. So let's see, let's find out. Okay, got the line right along the bottom of the tape there, and you can see that my eyeball job wasn't that great. You can see that the laser line goes over the tape there. So it's a little bit off. The tape's a little bit low, which isn't going to hurt anything. I would rather cut a little bit lower and then cut out a little bit more later. Of course, it'd be nice to cut it right the first time, but I think what I'm going to do is just pull this tape off, since we are using a laser on this, and go ahead and just mark right here with a marker. Okay, I just brought the laser to the other side and set it in place, and it looks pretty close. Obviously, this side is higher than the other side, but all I'm going to do is crank it up and get it right on line there. Okay, that was easy. The angle was exactly the same. We'll just go ahead and draw this mark here, right off that edge there. Okay, so what blade to choose? These straight blades I don't think are a great choice for running a long line, because when you're plunging it in and out, it's just harder to maintain a straight line. Once you get this kind of blade inside of a kerf, it kind of keeps itself aligned. So this should be a little bit better. Now I have a shorter one of these, which doesn't stick past my head very well. This one's a little longer, so we're going to put this one on. So where do you start? I don't even know. I'm going to start over here along my laser line, and hopefully this will go well. I was worried the paint would flake. It's not flaking at all. A lot of people run tape along it, and I used to do that. But I think the advantage of this round cut is it's not super abrupt, and as it catches edges, as it starts a new cut, it's just barely cutting into it, so it's not trying to fracture anything out. That's a guess, but all right, let's run it right underneath here. So look closely under the line that I'm cutting. You can see where the head of the multi-tool is actually scratching the paint. So make sure you orient the head of the multi-tool, on the side of the bumper that you're going to throw away anyway. this is hard to see, but I'm going to try to come like this. Now my cut line actually comes a little lower than my drawn line for my laser. I'm going to go underneath my laser line about that same distance all the way around. And if it's not enough, we'll just cut it out some more. Okay, so that's one side. It feels pretty free, and all right, everything seems to be free. Let's see if we can get this off of here.
Cool.
Okay, so no animals were harmed in the making of this, and there's no wiring, at least on this 2019 TRD off-road. Does this stay?
I don't know, maybe it helps prevent noise. It's a little muddy.
So, there. So let's go on here. So this hitch had 4 bolts here. There's 2 underneath here as well, okay? The other thing that'll be in the way of you putting this bumper on for these lower holes here, they go right here. And so there's 2 17mm bolts here as well, holding this tow hook on. All right, so it didn't go on because of this. So here's the spare tire just for reference. Here's the hitch, okay? So this piece right here really sticks down, and try to get you out of the light there. And so you've got to take this off. We've got to drop the spare because there's a bolt right here that holds this piece on and right there. And I don't know that we'll put this back on. We'll see, because I think this is just helps to locate the spare tire if I'm not mistaken. Now, over here, the trailer wiring plug mount bracket comes up right here. There's actually 2 bolts, one right there and one right there. So this is also getting jammed right here. That's why it's not going on over here. So we'll get these off. We'll get the spare tire down. We'll get those off. We'll get those off, and hopefully the bumper will slide on now. Okay, let's just look around here. Obviously we need to get the trim stuff on. You can see I almost cut too far there. Hopefully the trim will cover that. I think once these upper bolts get in right here, that'll help tilt the bumper up like this, or tilt it like that, and close this gap here. And maybe get rid of some of the gap here. Obviously the seal is going to stick down some. There is some red there. We might have to paint that later. And otherwise it seems like an okay fit so far. Okay, now I'm just going to go around and clean off all the pieces of plastic that are on the, not just the outside edge here, but the inside edge as well, so that the rubber piece that we put over this makes a nice clean fit. So I'm going to put these bolts in first before I put anything else in, just because I think these are going to help it line up better than, and help the other bolts line up hopefully. Okay, these are a tight fit here, so I got a 3/8 17mm 6-point. It's pretty narrow. Got to kind of pry it up a little bit just so this will fit. Okay, and before you get all gung-ho and tighten these down, don't forget you have these bolts to put into the frame right here, and they send you 2 new bolts because the 2 bolts that held this tow hook in, they're not really long enough. Well, they may be long enough to put that tow hook back in. I might put it back in. These other 2 bolts go right over here though. and we'll have to pull the exhaust to one side or the other, pry it to get them up in there. With this kit that's not right is the frame bolts. So these are the bolts on the driver's side that held in the tow hook, okay? These are M12 by 1.25, and the bolts they send for the passenger side, because there's nothing over there, it's above the exhaust, are M12 by 1.5. And so I was cross-threading them, trying to drive them in with my impact, and I was like, I can't get them in. What's the deal? So I finally pulled them out and pulled these out, and sure enough, these are 1.25s and these are 1.5s that they sent. So these are the wrong thread pitch. Well, it's not a big deal if you have some of these laying around, or you just can have a hardware store or a parts store right down your road, but I live out of town, and it's Sunday afternoon, and it's storming, and my road's super muddy, and I'm not interested in going to town. So I tapped out my threads to M12 by 1.5 on the passenger side so that these bolts will fit. Okay, I don't have any of these laying around. So that's kind of irritating that doesn't fit. M12 by 1.25s are exactly 1.5 inches long. So tapping these holes was a little bit of a pain because the exhaust literally sits right here. So what I did was I popped this piece off this rubber isolator here, and then just wedged some wood right here. That allowed me to get to the bolts, the bolt holes here, and tap those out, and actually gives me good access now to tighten these down. So good. So these are in place. They're mostly down. They're not tightened down. Same on the other side. I'm going to put these in and tighten these down first to draw the bumper this way, and then I'll tighten these down here and here. There's another thing, you know, with these two bolt holes here. These line up, but there's a tab that sticks up right there, and there's no slot for it here. So we got to bend this out of the way. And this piece, you know, that went right here, there's no way it's going to go back on. Okay, well, I caved. I just went ahead and notched it right here. And not a big deal. It took like 3 seconds on the bandsaw. And then just put these two bolts in. I'm not tapping that. It seems to be pretty sturdy. Now these side pieces, there's 2 holes for the front. There's 3 holes toward the back to line up with these 3 holes here. So this will just go right here and bolt in place. And we're just using the supplied hardware, some hex drag bolts, some nuts, 14mm nuts. Okay, so the other thing they didn't address is this hole here. You know, there's nothing in instructions about what to do about this. So I guess what I'm going to do is just cut a piece of the old bumper off and use some, you know, self-tapping screws or whatever. And so I want this latch cover. Basically, I just used the square and came off this. This is about 12 inches wide, maybe a little bit more. Actually, this is more than 12 inches because I wanted to make sure I got one hole there to use and one hole there just on the back side of that wall. So basically I'm just going to cut out a square. I might round these off a little bit so it doesn't look like a square, but hopefully it's going to be black and won't show up too bad against the other black. And I made a few mistakes because I tried drawing different lines. Brake cleaner gets silver Sharpie off black bumper easily. You just wipe it off and it comes right off. So if you make a mistake, no big deal. Okay, so this side actually came up. I'm pretty happy with this overall. It took some massaging. It took about 45 minutes to get this panel to fit correctly. And let me show you about a couple of things I learned. And as far as these clips go, I'll explain this on the other side of how this lower panel comes off. But what happened was when I put my bumper on, it jammed right here and it jammed right here. So this was too tight and the bumper pushed this and actually bowed this out and caused this to pop over and broke one of my clips up here. Now, it seems to still have a pretty good fit here, so I'm not too worried about it. I could have put a little screw in it just to hold it in place. I started to do that, but it seems to be a good fit, and so I'm not too worried about that. But I did break one of my clips, just ramming the bumper on. So it's a tight fit around the frame, so be careful as you're pushing it on. Watch the sides, as you're tapping it on. Make sure you're not contacting, and it's hard to see because it's all black, and you just think because there's not much of a gap there that it's okay. But I actually broke that clip off up there because of that. Now, what that did was it bowed it out like this. So what I had to do is take this panel off. Instead of using the oscillating multi-tool, I'm so afraid it's going to jump over and just scar it, I used the flap disc on an angle grinder. Dude, that worked perfect. And it was so easy just to make a perfect line, just and I just did a little by little until I got it to where it would fit. and I can just get kind of a razor blade right through there. It's a little thicker right here. You know, I can get like a little bit of a screwdriver through there. And of course there's a gap right there. That's okay. That's the way it's built. But I can get a razor blade in there. So just keep that in mind. When you're putting this together, just be careful. Also, there's 2 bolt holes in the front of this piece right here. And what happened was I ended up just drilling from the back side through these existing bolt holes with a drill through the plastic here. So I just made a new hole instead of using that hole, trying to make that hole work. And I just used this is SAE hardware, but I had some locking nylon nuts for these. And these are kind of long, maybe 1/4 inch by 20 thread bolts. And so those go all the way through the bumper right here to give this some stability. Now, I was able to get a 10mm screw there, and there as well. So we got 3 10mm screws, and we're able to get 2 of these in because this doesn't line up with anything here. All right, so, but that's okay. And then this doesn't have a hole either. It still feels nice and rigid, nice and secure. So I'm pretty happy with the way that came out. Let's just look at these lines here for a second. I'll try to hold the light so you can see. You know, there's a little bit of a gap there, but it's not terrible. And there's a little bit of a gap there. When you're standing up, you don't even notice it. Panel off, this panel that you cut here, you know, to get it to fit well. I was initially thinking I'd have to take the bumper off, you know, cut it, or take that trim off, cut it, put that back on, and put the bumper back on. To me, it was easier to take this off. Now, to take this panel off right here, you just have to take this out, and then it comes off pretty easily. This little panel right here, you want to make sure you pry from the front side of the panel, not the back side toward the tail light, but toward the front side, because that's where the little tabs are, and little tabs that'll actually pop loose. Let's just look at it so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is the front side right here. See that little tab right there? That's what pops loose when you pry on it. These tabs, you'll never pop them loose because they go way inside. Okay, so don't pry from the back. And of course, when you put it back in, here's how it goes. Those tabs go toward the rear and pops right in. Perfect. But here's the tail light, obviously, and the tail light has 2 studs sticking out. There's one there, there's one there, and those studs just have 10mm nuts on them. Okay. Also, you can see that there's the connector, and it's just to press it to pop it out. That piece right there is a little stud that goes into a little clip that holds it, and there's one right there as well. So there's a clip. There's a stud there that goes in a clip and a stud there that goes in a clip. Okay, so it's pretty simple. So basically the light just pops out like this, straight out toward the back. Okay, now because these 2 clips are here and here, even though you take the nuts off, those will be holding it in, and you really can't get your fingers behind it to pry it out. At least I couldn't. So what I did was I took this 1/4 drive extension and I stuck it on the stud right there and then tapped it with a rubber mallet, and that popped it loose. The worry is, of course, that you pop those clips out and the whole thing falls out and hits the ground. And I'm not sure how much these cost, but I'm sure they're a lot. So leave one of the nuts threaded on a little bit, okay? And you can still pop it loose, you know, put it on 3 or 4 threads, and you can still pop this loose and it'll hold itself, and then you can unscrew it by hand. Oh, and also make sure, because if you drop those nuts down in there, you might not ever find them again. So what I did was I was using my electric impact, buzz the nuts off, and then I'd reach in with my finger, grab the nut, make sure the nut was trapped against the socket, and then pull it out. That seemed to work well. I didn't drop any so far. All right, and as far as this side panel goes, there's a few clips. So taking the light off helps, because then you can access this. I don't know what this thing is. This is just like a piece of plastic and a clip assembly. Originally, I had pulled this off right here. You can see if you just push this down, these black outer pieces are attached to this. So they just popped around those 2 white clips. Those 2 white clips stayed trapped or captured against this, and this whole thing came off. I didn't need to do that. There's just a little tab right here that has a little catch right there, and all you have to do is lift that tab, and this goes underneath that right there, just like that. Okay, there's a nut right there that holds that. All this edge does, this is real simple. I thought this was harder than it was. There's a clip right there that has a tab underneath that catches that right there. Or that tab, I'm sorry, here's the tab right here that pops up into that right there. So you can just pop that off. Be careful, this is soft, you know, this is 6 years old now, so just be careful with it. Also, you can see these little tabs along here, along this top edge, There's one, there's one, there's one. They're kind of like this one right here that goes right there, and they go inside kind of similar things along here. So I don't know if my light's getting it there, but let me turn it sideways because my light's... All right, so there's one right there. You can see the little thing sticking down. And so these just catch along the edge and they pop right out. You just have to kind of pry it out. Now the one in the front, now you can see a hole right there in the top, and this hole goes right here over that stud that's right there. So this stud right here goes in that top hole right there. So you pop this one in like this, that little stud right there, and then you just bring this around like this and pop this over this. A little bit of a snug fit, but then you can work it all together, okay? And that'll go in there. That'll go into place there where that hole lines up there. And this will pop in place here eventually. Okay, hear that snap? And then the rest of these will pop along the side. Just like that. It's simple as that. Snap, snap, snap. And then we can look at our edge here and see where we're deficient. Now I can look at this hole right here. You might be able to see this in the camera, but it needs to come up some for this hole to line up with the actual hole. Okay, now we can look at our edge here. Of course, we don't have the edge trim on yet, but you can see that with this lined up here, that's about where the bolt's going to go and hold that in place. All the clips are in place. It's in perfect placement. The bumper's where it's going to be. It's not going to move. So we've definitely got to trim this because this is making contact here, and that's not enough room for the edge trim. So I'm definitely have to cut off some of this here. And so now that my bumper's fully mounted, it's tightened down everywhere in the back here, underneath the frame here, and it's in place. This is where it's going to be. So I can go ahead and make my cut here. You just take a marker and run it along here so I have a nice even edge. And also around this side, you can see that it needs to go way forward. This actually needs to be in front of this part underneath here. So I'm going to have to take off a lot of this and round it around. This doesn't look too bad, but this is hitting right here, and it shouldn't be hitting right there. So we're definitely going to have to make some changes there. Now that's after confirming our bumper is in the right place. It's not going to go any further forward here. It's right against the metal right there, so it can't go any further forward. So there's the line right there. That's what we're after. I'm going to try not to overdo it, but I'm going to try to start it right there and bring it back straight there, a little bit around that side. Okay, this is actually a much better fit now. All the clips line up. It popped right in place. You know, the screw hole lines up perfectly there. This clip's in place up here. That is. So it looks good. We got about a 3/16, I'm guessing, gap around here, all the way around here, but you can see it gets tight right here against the bumper. So we got to make that a little bit wider so that edge trim will fit inside there. Also, you see my pin mark there that I made. I've got to trim down there. So I won't know if this part's okay right here until I mount this part right here on this, and then I mount the mud flap on, because the mud flap's what kind of pulls this in and lines this up with the front part of the fender there, with that part up there. And then if this is hitting too much, it'll kind of bow here, and we'll be able to tell if it's making too much contact there. Now last piece, you can see the gap there is pretty good. It's going to get pushed in all the way to right there. That gap gets super narrow right here. It's actually touching there, and my fender doesn't go in as far right here as it does on the other side. So we've got to definitely get some of this cut off right here. Here I'm just kind of finding the depth that I want to cut. I'm setting my pin right against the bumper right there and just running it along it. It's giving me a much straighter edge. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut all of that color off. Once all that color is off, I'm done. Now to go over this again just a little bit, because it's a little bit weird. What I'm doing is pulling the back part off, pulling this back clip off. We saw that earlier. And then I'm popping this clip loose right here. This piece I'm just pulling forward right here to get it over that little knob. And then I'm just wiggling it. And I'm wiggling it, and if wiggling it, pulling it doesn't work, I wiggle it and stop, and then wiggle a little harder, and just a little bit harder. Don't try to I'm not trying to overdo it, but just wiggle it stop, wiggle it, and usually a little bit more pressure will get it to pop off. Okay, so what do you do with the big hole? I cut this out of the bumper because I'm not using this anymore, obviously. But basically this went right there. Now, I initially cut it out wide enough to cover the whole hole, but I ended up cutting these pieces out of the side, okay, and they went something like, how'd they go? Something like that, I guess, so that you could screw this, you know, to the original holes inside of here. Okay, so that's how the original bumper went on. But with these in place, these bumped, they're so wide, they bumped into this and pushed this out so far that it wouldn't snap over the actual latch. It goes on like that pretty easily, and then you just have to pull the seal over the top. And as you can see, it doesn't cover up the whole hole, which is a little disappointing, but you can get it centered right there underneath that, which is awesome. But you can see there's a gap there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and mount this, put it in place. It closes just fine with this. You know, there's no obstruction, there's no resistance, and you can still get your jack in, and that's an important thing here too. When I put this on here, I was going to use self-tapping screws, was my original plan. But I don't want to get anything close to the tire. You know, the tire's right underneath there. It looks like this frame's going to keep it from coming up any higher. So I might just put a little couple thread certs here and go ahead and put those in place and be done. Okay, so here's what it looks like with the hole. And here's what it looks like with the door closed with the hole. You can see it if you like really look up inside there. It's dark in there, so you really don't see a hole anyway. Okay, and here's what it looks like with the plastic cover on. Look how faded the bumper is. This car's 2019, it's 2025, so that's about 6 years old. And just look how faded and gray it looks compared to the regular black here. That's what it looks like with the hole covered. And when we close the door, we still see this plastic right here. So you can see the screws, but I don't know. I'm not unhappy with that. It's not the greatest, but when you walk by it, you kind of go like, oh, I wonder what that is. Huh. It's looking better. Obviously, I haven't done that and that, but that and that are done. And that looks a lot better than that gray stuff. This is from an old Xterra I had. I bought it from Nissan, bumper black. This is probably, I don't know, 10 years old or older. It still works. Okay, got the final touches done. I had to wait for this edge trim to show up in the mail, but here it is, and it looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy. This seems to be working okay. You know, it's dirty just like everything else, but the door closes. There's no issues with sealing or road noise or anything like that. So happy with that. Speaking of road noise, these can rattle a lot, okay? And so you can see this one. If you have two of these on the back, of course, we're going to do the front bumper too, and we're going to have these rattling around. That's going to be a pain in the butt. So what you can do is put these little rubber isolators on here, and these are just little rubber washers, and I'll put the link in the description of the ones I get. There are a couple different sizes in here, a couple different thicknesses rather. They're made for this shaft right here to fit around this, and I just used a thick one and a thin one on both sides here, and that made it nice and tight. You can still bend it up, you can still bend it down, but it doesn't rattle. It doesn't bang into the bumper like this will. Okay, so this is kind of a must-have. They're not expensive. Okay, so I got these two in on this side. I'm just going to stick my screwdriver in here and try to pry this out a little bit. See if I can drop these in here. And they drop in a little bit easier. See how far I can get them down here. Stick my finger in this side and get them lined up. Now, I'm going to put a tweak on this here, because I don't want this falling off on the road. This is the kind of a liability. If you're going to hang hardware in your vehicle, you need to check it periodically. Well, my mechanic buddy found my spare tire on the back of my Jeep, man, like a year or so ago, was loose, and it was close to falling off. And I didn't hear it rattling. I don't remember hear it rattling, but he was like, dude, you got to check that, bro. And I was like, okay. So, you know, when I walk by the Jeep now, I put my hand on the spare tire and I wiggle it around to make sure it's tight. Okay, but that's pretty good. Not going to rattle. Still can move it up and down. Perfect. Well, upcoming videos, we're going to get this front bumper on here. This is the front bumper for the 4Runner. And it's got a few pieces, and it's got a winch plate there. I'm going to reinforce that so it's a little stronger. And the other thing we're going to do is mount this aux beam switch panel. Now this is a little bit different version than I have used in the past. I've installed 3 of these. This will be my 4th install. We're going to be putting this on this Foreigner, this 2019 Foreigner, and that way we can have, we can light up our backup lights, we can light up our front lights, we can hook our winch to it, we can hook our compressor to it, we can put everything to it. Now the cool part about this one is, just a little teaser here, is the layout is different. And so you have your big holes there for your cables that come in here, and when you take the lid off, you have a 5, 10, 20, and 30 amp on this side as well as this side, so you can bring your wires in from the side here. It actually has a slot on both sides. So depending on your layout, you may want the older version or you may want this version where you have wires coming out both sides. So we have plenty of room under the Foreigner hood. I'm not worried about having wires come out both sides or even 3 sides here because we got plenty of room. I love Toyota for that. All right, would I do it again? I don't know, you spend less money on something and then you spend more time fabricating it to make it work. I like the looks of it. I think it's initial quality is okay. I mean, we haven't obviously pulled on it or winched with it or anything like that, but it seems to be built pretty well for the price. Now, had I spent, $1,000 on a rear bumper of a good name brand, that'd probably be a bolt up and everything would be pretty straightforward. That might have been a lot easier and taken a lot less time. So there's some pros and cons. So, weigh it out. This may not be the bumper for you. If you don't mind fabricating stuff and massaging stuff and making stuff work, then this bumper might be for you. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed the video. The video of the aux beam, don't forget about that. It's coming up, of the aux beam switch controller. And also we'll be doing other half of this bumper is the front bumper. We'll be doing that with probably a Harbor Freight 12,000 pound winch. So that'll be fun. I don't know if we're gonna have to beef up the front suspension. We might have to put some heavier coils on or something to carry that extra weight. It's gonna be a couple 100 pounds, but we'll see. All right, come along with me. Be sure to subscribe. Look forward to those videos. They're coming. Thanks for watching.